The Beaver Banter podcast is proudly brought to you by the Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. Once a Beaver, always a Beaver. The Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation is here to keep that green and white pride going strong for its 50,000 graduates around the world. From scholarships that open doors for students to events that bring BSU alumni and friends together, you can get connected, give back, and leave a legacy at Bemidji State. Whether you're a proud BSU grad or a local supporter, or you just love cheering on the Beavers, come be a part of the action at bsualumni.org. That's bsualumni.org.
Hey everyone, it's time for another edition of Beaver Banter.
Beaver Sports Talk lives here.
It is the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner. There is Ian Rivers. The Beaver Banter podcast, as always, presented by Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. And Ian, once again, we have another esteemed member of our podcast guest lineup joining us today. Why don't you introduce him?
Yeah, welcoming back Jared Rubado of the Bemidji Pioneer. He's been gracious enough to bless us with his presence once again in a very chaotic end of the CCHA season, to say the least. Beavers had a bye week last week. The men's team did. Women's team unfortunately swept to end their regular season by Ohio State, but I think overall it was still quite the weekend of hockey on the whole, due to a couple of gold medals that were won by the U.S. teams, and then Bemidji High School, the girls team, going to state as well.
Yeah, I was down in St. Paul. I actually went down for the Mankato series before the Beavs were on a bye, and then the day, or actually 2 days before I left, girls hockey wins the section title for the first time since 2007. And usually, like when I go down to like St. Thomas or Mankato, I'll stay in St. Paul. My girlfriend lives pretty close to the X, and I'll come back Monday morning. Mondays are usually like a lighter day for me in the week. It's like, all right, well, I'd either come back Monday morning and go back down there on Tuesday night, because I kind of got looped into covering War Road at state as well. And I don't know, let's just make a week out of it. And so watched a lot of hockey at the X, half of it on my computer. I got stuck with all the morning games at state girls hockey too. So every game I had an Olympic game on. It's kind of like half watching it, but huge ups to like Peacock and NBC, because like when a game ended, it was like right on there to watch right away after. So like I went, like I got home from Thursday was the gold medal game for the women's team, and like I basically just got to see the goal. Like that's all I really saw in that game, because Bemidji was in a war with Edina, the Class 2A game. And so I just went home and I flipped the game on, and it was awesome. And so, yeah, a lot of hockey. Then it switched to CCHA hockey over the weekend. And boys, I don't know how, like, I don't think it could be tighter than this at the top of the league. Like this is insane. It's actually hard to comprehend that five teams legitimately have a shot to win the league. With 2 games left to play for each of them, unless you're Augustana and you have none left to play. So, I think the big things that stick out are, imagine saying Mankato had a path to win it 3 weeks ago. And now I think, at least my gut tells me, they might have like the most likely path to win it with how this is going to shake out. Like what, if everything kind of goes chalk, Mankato feels like they're going to somehow win the McNaughton Cup again. I thought it was inconceivable Bemidji State could fall to 7, but Lake State got really hot at the right time, and they're playing some good hockey right now. Not that there's that much of a difference between 7th and 6th place this year. Like really the separation between the top 3 teams is very, very, very small, just in terms of on the ice. I guess it's more matchups and where you're going. But Augustana, St. Thomas, Michigan Tech, if those are the top 3 teams, which they probably won't be because Mankato plays Northern, so they'll be in there too. But it's just you have, each team has their strengths, each team has their flaws, and they're not, they're all going to be favored, but they're not all unbeatable kind of thing. And so, yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy weekend of hockey. It could have went a lot differently if Augustana didn't score 2 goals left in the third period on Friday night against St. Thomas and pull out a shootout win. But now we're here. Augustana's in first place, has a 2-point edge. They need a lot of help to stay there. They need the most amount of help to stay there. And it's just packed. It's the second you start thinking how this is going to play out this weekend, I think you're probably wrong. And that's just an evergreen statement in this league, though.
Yeah, exactly. And, the other thing, too, is Bemidji State has an opportunity to play spoiler in all this as they host St. Thomas this weekend. What are the storylines to watch coming into this regular season finale for the Beavers?
I think for Bemidji State, we'll start with the spoiler stuff, because I asked Saratori that question, like, specifically today. Like, do you take pride in, like, the aspect of being a spoiler? And he goes, to be honest, like, not really. Like, it's more about how they're playing going into it. Like, from Bemidji State's perspective, like, if St. Thomas wins the league, or Augustana or Michigan Tech or whoever it is, like, if it's not them, I don't think they really care who wins it. And that's that. I think some people could probably hear that and say, you should care. And that, like, but to me, I hear that, I'm like, this is a team that's, they put a couple of good weekends in a row together. Like, I know they split with Ferris, and I know they split with Minnesota State, and it sucks to sit there and say that you're 2-2 and those were 2 good weekends. They absolutely deserve better than what they got against Ferris on Friday night. They played horrible defensively, but they did get goalied a little bit by Martin Lundberg, and they lost 6-3 with an empty net. Like, it's a bad game in a long stretch of bad defensive games, but the chances were there. And Ian, and you and I talked about it in Grand Rapids. Like, the chances weren't there for a month and a half in the second half. And so for them to start getting them felt like a big step in the right direction, even a loss. And then the next night, they win. And yeah, sure, it sucks that it goes to overtime. And, that's now a big point if you care about between 6th place and 7th place. But, there's 8 other overtime games you can point to in league play that could have made a difference there. But then you go to Mankato, and it's like there were some weird vibes going into that weekend, just with, okay, Flameng's out for indefinitely. Like, who knows when he's back? He's probably not going to play this weekend. In fact, I know he's not going to play this weekend, which sucks for a senior on senior weekend, right? But all right, you lose Flameng, you lose your Hobie Baker candidate, one of your captains. Things are not going right. Like, you're sliding a little bit further down the standings. You had your easiest 2 weekends on paper against Northern and Ferris, and you split both of those weekends. And now you have to play your only series against Mankato in the regular season on the road, when you're kind of fighting it a little bit. And I was very impressed with how they played. Like, yeah, they scored 1 goal, and it was not a 5-on-5 goal. It was a 3-on-3 goal. And that's not going to cut it in the Mason Cup playoffs. But for this team's biggest issue in the second half being odd man rushes and preventing odd man rushes and just playing a tighter defensive game, which is, 2 years ago, if you told me I'm taking the BSU beat writing job and they were going to struggle this bad defensively and the games would feel as wide open as they are, I'd call you a liar. Like, but that has been the biggest problem in the second half. And those issues were shored up really quick. And, Max Hildebrand looking like a very confident goalie, looking like a WHL goalie of the year, was a massive boost. And I think getting that kind of weekend, ending it on a win on the road in a place that has been a really tough building for this team to win in traditionally since they've been a D1 team, and then you go into a bye, like you feel good about yourself for 2 weeks instead of 1. And I think there's just a rejuvenated sense of confidence that I get from this group. Similar to last year a little bit, where they had a big weekend against Michigan Tech. They had a nice weekend. I think it was against Bowling Green, if I'm not mistaken, and they split with Mankato to end the year. And they went into Augustana feeling a lot better than they, probably did a month earlier than that. And I think we're getting that a little bit again. Will it be enough to win a first round series? I don't know. But in terms of if you're the school that's hosting Bemidji State this year, I think you're starting to get a little bit nervous of, shoot, we don't want to play the Beavs. Like, give us Lake State. Like, we need, if I wonder what's going on in the coaches' rooms this week of St. Thomas, Augustana, Michigan Tech, and Minnesota State, because there has to be a conversation at some point of, if Bemidji State takes a game or better off of St. Thomas, that is the last team you want to play when the playoffs start. And how important is it going to be to get one of the top 2 seeds to completely avoid being Bemidji State? Because if Bemidji State loses, they get swept at home this weekend, you probably feel a lot better about playing Bemidji State in the first round than Lake State, because Lake State's another really hot team right now too. I mean, they, granted they swept Northern, which is kind of a given at this point in the year, especially with their goalie issues, but they looked like a really, really solid team against Michigan Tech and took Michigan Tech to overtime. They kind of choked away one of those games too. Like Lake State, the gap between Lake State and Bemidji State should be a little closer than it is after how Lake State finished that series 2 Saturdays ago. I'm just curious what some of those conversations are like amongst other coaches, though, of trying to avoid finishing third. And I would really like to know what it's like in Sioux Falls with Augustana. If Bemidji State finishes third, I think Augustana is most like, or if Bemidji State finishes sixth, Augustana is most likely to finish third. And I get it, all those kids have a lot more playoff experience than they did a year ago, but you start wondering if it's just like an LA Kings Edmonton Oilers thing where it's like these 2 teams are just destined to meet in the first round again. And you have a very confident group of Bemidji State players who have legitimately been there and done that in that building before against a bunch of Augustana kids who haven't. And I think that's just a recipe for disaster for Augustana. But then again, you could kind of go up and down the list for potential playoff opponents, and I'm sure we'll get to that more later. But St. Thomas, that's a tough match on paper in terms of how high-powered they are compared to Bemidji State's defending issues. But are the defending issues still issues? Because they weren't against Minnesota State. And if they play like that, they're still going to get their chances offensively because St. Thomas isn't as good of a defensive team as Minnesota State. So does the game open up then a little bit more for Bemidji State there? Especially, and I'd like to give a lot of credit to Bemidji State fans in this aspect. When they play at St. Thomas, they travel well. It's a lot of transplants from went to Bemidji State that live in the metro area, but they put butts in seats in that building, whether it was at the St. Thomas Ice Arena or the Lee and Penny Anderson Arena, more so than Mankato, more so than Sioux Falls. There's a healthy contingent of Beavers fans when they play there, and I wonder if that sticks in the mind of Rico Blasi a little bit. Michigan Tech, right? I would probably have them as the best team in the CCHA right now. They're getting great goaltending. They probably have the defenseman of the year. They have the deepest group of forwards, and they have a legit top line with probably the best player in the CCHA and Steven Sardarian. However, it is a kind of Jekyll and Hyde team this year in a lot of respects. And Bemidji State has no problem going into that building and winning in big games. They've done it. They did it last year when in a series they absolutely had to have on Winter Carnival weekend. I think they took 5 out of 6 points. They go out to Houghton this year. They're coming off the heels of kind of an iffy non-conference schedule where they swept Anchorage, lost both to St. Cloud and Duluth, and they go out and take 3 points in Houghton. And it's also a lot of those Houghton kids' first time playing CCHA playoff games. Like Jack Anderson, he's going to win. I expect him to win CCHA Defenseman of the Year. I mean, he's been unbelievable. He has never played in a college hockey playoff game, ever. Owen Bartoskevich has never played in a college hockey playoff game. That matters. And as much as coaches like to say it doesn't matter, I firmly believe it does matter. And I think the proof of it last year was Augustana and Bemidji State, because when it got to that third period, when Bemidji State needed a goal, it was kids who have been there and done that before that got him one. It was Noah Quinn on the power play with an assist from Jackson Judding. A lot of playoff games from Jackson Judding in that series. It was Matthias Scholl-Annette, who has played a lot of playoff games. And it was Adam Fleming in overtime, who had played a lot of playoff games. It wasn't rookies making the difference there. So we'll find out. I think this weekend is really interesting from Bemidji State's perspective, because there's a chance we go into Friday and they're tied with Lake State and Ferris State playing. They're starting their series on Thursday night, and Lake State does have the tiebreaker over Bemidji State, and there's no way that Bemidji State can get it back. A little bit of an explainer there for people. Lake State and Bemidji State only played twice this year. You have to play 4 times for it to be a head-to-head tiebreaker. The difference there is that the league does not feel like it is equitable for only 2 games to decide it, with all 2 games being in one of the 2 buildings. You have to have 2 home games, 2 road games. So Bemidji State and Lake State only played twice, even though Bemidji State won the head-to-head battle in both. Lake State has more regulation wins. Lake State has, I want to say, 9 regulation wins this year, and Bemidji State has 5. So in league play. So
Yes.
they
have 7 if you count. If you count out of league play.
You're right. They do have 7 if you count outside of league play. But yeah, that's one of my favorite stats this year is that Bemidji State has 5 regulation wins in the CCHA and is sitting at 32 points. So.
Yeah. 3 of those are against Northern Michigan, which is the last place team in the CCHA, which is just lovely to think about. But yeah, I mean, something I don't want to let slip by the wayside, you brought it up, was Max Hildebrand and how well he played against Minnesota State. And they went to him over the split with Robbins after a couple weekends of just team struggles in general. I don't necessarily blame Robbins for everything that was happening, but something that I've always had as a big proponent of, not that I'm a coach, but like if the team's going to be struggling anyways, you need to think about the future. And Max Hildebrand is the future of the goaltending position at Bemidji State. Sans obviously the transfer portal and how college hockey works and college sports in general. Mm-hmm. You need to get him games under his belt. And that's, I don't know if that's why Saratori did what he did, or if he just felt that Max was the best way to go. And it took a couple weekends, but I think that this weekend against Minnesota State was a culmination of that. Finally, like, we've seen him be a rookie in the CCHA, and now, like you said, Jared, he's kind of reverted back to the player we saw last year in the WHL, winning awards and being the goaltender I think he can be. And like I said, it wasn't necessarily the volume of saves that he had against Minnesota State that was impressive. It was, he didn't play like Connor Hellebuck, but he made some fantastic saves in that series against Minnesota State. And I just wanted to bring that up, that he has been, and if he can continue playing in that, at least 90% of what he did against Minnesota State, it's going to be a big factor for these, coming weekends for BSU.
Definitely. Like if Max Hildebrand plays like he did in Mankato, Bemidji State has a chance in every single game they play in the rest of the year. Every single game. Like that's to go back to the tandem part, it is really interesting, right? Like Rathan had such a good first half in a lot of ways, but I don't think the quality of the opponent was as high as it was now. Like even you look at the Augustana game, he had his first shutout, and he made some really big saves in that game. I don't think Augustana is the same team that they were in the middle of October back then. And, you get to the later part of the first half, start moving into the second half, and they're starting the tandem again, and then they split it back up, and I think it's been 7 or 8 games in a row they've given the net to Hildebrand. Yep. And I asked Saratori about it too, and, none of this has come in as a detriment as to how Rathan has played, but the prevailing thought was that they had not played well enough in Max Hildebrand to properly evaluate him in this tandem. And I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to say he is the higher upside goalie. I mean, how many goalies win WHL goalie of the year? Like it's an incredibly hard award to win. And it's awards don't mean anything really, like a junior level awards when it comes to how good they are in college, but I shouldn't say they don't mean anything. I don't think they mean everything, but when it's a season long award of you have this age-out goaltender who's undrafted, playing in the same leagues as Ravensbargen and Ivan Kovic and former Beaver Rain Legal joined it, right? There's so many high-end goalies, and there's goalies that are near the top of central scouting. There's goalies that don't stiff central scouting, and Max Hildebrand, I don't think was ever supposed to be this goalie that was going to win the WHL goalie of the year. And so not only was he fighting against the other goalies in the league to do it, but also the reputation that he probably shouldn't belong in the conversation. And to overcome that and win that award and lead a Prince Albert team very deep into the playoffs, and just ran into a hot Medicine Hat team with Gavin McKenna. That's a really, really good resume, and it's a high upside resume too. I think at times this year we've seen the floor is a little bit lower than Rathan Robbins. You can look at maybe that Ferris State game when he got pulled. I think you can maybe even point to the Minnesota Duluth game that he got pulled in. But there has also been a lot of games this year where he's played much better than the record or than the stats he had from it. And I looked to the second half of that Duluth series. he was outstanding against Duluth on the road. And there was a game they lost 5-1, but they gave up 4 power play goals and they had 7 penalties. They spent 12 to 14 minutes of that game on the penalty kill. That is exhausting. And not only that, when you're spending that much time killing penalties, it's just so hard to get into any kind of a flow offensively that it's just always going to be an uphill battle when you're that undisciplined. And that's what they were for a lot of the games that Max Hildebrand gave up goals where, it's 5 goals on 27 shots. Like, how is this happening for Max Hildebrand, a WHL goalie of the year? It's like, well, 3 of them were on the power play. There's an extra attacker goal in there. They gave up 7 odd man rushes and 3 of them were breakaways, stuff like that. Like that, I think the context of it matters. And you have to apply the same context to Rathan Robbins, but I think they like the high upside part of Hildebrand. I think that's probably where I go with that. And like you said, Ian, it's college sports is, if you don't always have a one eye on the future, you're not doing your job. And if Max Hildebrand is supposed to be like the true rock in goal for the foreseeable future, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, or the entire 4 years, you need to let him work this stuff out, and you need to let him have the moments like he had last weekend against Mankato, where there was a real point in that game where he got locked in, and it was the 2-on-1 save he made on Luigi Benincasa in the second period. Because in the first period, despite not giving up a goal, he looked nervous. He struggled with his rebound control, and that's when he's run into problems this year. In every game he's pulled, he struggled with rebound control, but he found another lane and he found another gear when he made a big 2-on-1 save to rob Luigi Benincasa the game's first goal. The only goal he gave up in that series was off Jack Smith's kneecap on a pass that was deflected twice. Like, you throw your hands in the air and be like, all right, if that's going in, if that's the only shot that's going to beat me, I'm fine with it. And he came back the next night, made probably 4 or 5 really big saves. Like you said, Ian, it wasn't the volume of saves, but the quality was up there. And I think we've seen that at times this year. Like, we saw it when he played at Northern Michigan. We saw it. I'd venture to even say we saw it against Augustana in one of the games too. So, but for him to be able to take that game, get a good bus ride home, take it, sit on it for 2 weeks, and probably just have, for the first time in this entire season, where he is just itching to get to this Friday, to play another game, to feel what it's like to be in control of his game again. I just expect him to be the confident version of himself that he was recruited to be. And it's great to see a player get there too. Like, it's, there was a lot of pressure on him, a lot of pressure on Max Hildebrand this year. First of all, you're replacing Matthias Scholl. It's a tough kid to replace, a kid that was beloved by BSU fans for the last 4 years. Everybody loves the goalies, but if you're a smaller goalie who makes insane saves, you're beloved by the fans. And Matthias Scholl was that. And this is his first true time living away from home. Like, yes, he did, billet in Prince Albert, but it wasn't too far away from where he grew up in Saskatoon. And, his dad was always a hop, skip, and a jump away working for the Saskatoon Blades. And it was a very local kind of feel and a very familiar kind of feel. You take that, you stick him in a new country, in a state he's never lived in before. You give him a roommate for the first time. And, oh, by the way, you're supposed to backstop this team to contention for the McNaughton Cup and the Mason Cup. And when things don't go wrong, your errors show up on the scoreboard. Like, it's a lot for a freshman to handle. And for freshman skaters, like, yeah, they go through a lot of those same growing pains, but it's not often that their mistakes show up on the scoreboard that much. And they get some time to, be a healthy scratch for a half a year and, maybe get their minutes when they can and eat some minutes in exhibitions and, Black Aces style in the playoffs, right? But there was a lot put on Max Hildebrand's plate, and I think he's handled it like an absolute pro. And for as long as he's going to play this game at whatever level he's playing at, whether it's college or pro, I think there's a real shot that save that he made on Luigi Benincasa is one that he's going to look back to a long time from now and be like, that was the save where everything clicked for me, beyond the junior hockey level. So it's a great point, though, Ian, because it was really seemingly out of nowhere and for not really like an obvious reason why they broke the tandem. But Max Hildebrand's their guy now. I think they're going to run him until the wheels fall off. And if he plays, like I said, if he plays like he did against Mankato, they're going to be in every single game they're going to play.
So looking forward now, obviously the series against St. Thomas and this weekend's chaotic schedule, trying to predict where the Beavers are going to go is impossible, because they could.
It's impossible.
They could very well be 7th. They could be 6th. Any one of those top teams could be 2nd or 3rd. Is there a team, though, that you think the Beavers would fare well against in the top 5? Obviously, you kind of broke down that everybody in that top 5 has, but do you value the inexperience of maybe a Michigan Tech more when you're looking at a matchup, or do you value like a positive travel schedule for St. Thomas or for Minnesota State? Like, where are you looking at if you're looking at an ideal matchup for Bemidji State in the first round?
The first and foremost, the last team they should want to play is Bowling Green, unequivocally. 1, it's the worst travel. 2, it's a building they have never had success in, whether it's playoffs or regular. Like, yeah, I know they had a split this year against Bowling Green. They had the weirdest 3-point split last year. Mm-hmm. Those are anomalies. Like, the home and road splits for these teams, and Bowling Green came to Bemidji and won 2 games too this year, and that was unexpected, because I think it's something like close to 70% of winners in those games are the home team. Like, it's more drastic than Minnesota State, and Bemidji State there. So I think you add in the travel. I think if Bowling Green is also in a position to host Bemidji State, that means they climb to 2 or 3, which means they beat Tech at least once, but probably twice this weekend. And now you're not feeling great about that either if you're Bemidji State. So I think that's interesting too.
For reference, Bemidji State's home record against Bowling Green is 16-9-2. Their away record against Bowling Green is 6-14-3. So I would say,
drastic splits,
67% of the time, ish.
Yeah, and I know they don't want to go to Bowling Green, and the travel is the biggest part of it, and also Bowling Green has had the best atmosphere in the second half of the CCHA by about, like, Slater's been packed every weekend for like the past 3 home series they've had, which is awesome. Like, that's awesome. We should want that as fans of the CCHA, should want that as better buildings to play in and more juice. It's stuff like that only helps the league. But here's the thing: is I don't think Bowling Green is gonna. I think Bowling Green's gonna finish 5th. I'm actually pretty confident in that. Like, I know Tech's what's this real separation between them and Tech isn't that much, like, on paper, but Tech's coming off a bye. I think Tech had its bad weekend in the second half against Lake State and still came out of it with 3 points. Bowling Green dropping 5 out of 6 to Mankato at home is very concerning to me. Mankato's a team that has struggled scoring big time this year. They're a great defensive team, fantastic, especially when you have Alex Tracy back there. But the fact that Bowling Green has struggled so much, or sorry, not Bowling Green, Mankato struggled so much defensively, and they scored 5 on Friday, and I don't remember what the score of Saturday's game was, but and then Bowling Green also lost a goaltender, Jacob Steinman. I think he got hurt against Augustana, if I'm not mistaken. But he was their Saturday night goalie, and now that goalie room just gets a little bit more depleted. Not that they don't have 2 very capable options back there in Tyler Palmer and Cole Moore, but I just think Bowling Green is running out of gas a little bit to get home ice, and I think it is going to be. I think Michigan Tech at home will take at least 4 points off of them, and they'll pin Bowling Green into that 5 spot. Mankato's going to take 6 out of Northern, right? Or from Northern. We can pencil that one in, that Mankato's going to finish with 52 points. But after Bowling, if you're power ranking those 5, right? Bowling Green's going to finish 5. That's the last team you want to play. Oh, it's really tough, but I think it's got to be Augustana, right? Augustana lost Hunter Bischoff for the year. He's their captain. Yeah. He's top 6 forward. It's a big loss, huge loss. Their leading scorer is Leo Bulgakov, a 5'8" freshman who played in the NAL last year, who's never played a college hockey game. Jacob Yastrzemski's, I think, a USHL center. I'll double check where Yastrzemski played in junior, but another one, a rookie centering their top line, going against probably Riley Funk on every faceoff, who has taken the second most faceoffs in the entire CCHA. There's so many parallels to the matchup they had last year that I just think you can lean on the star power of guys like Oliver Peer. You can lean on the confident goaltender of Max Hildebrand to go toe-to-toe with Kotai. And you just have to play the same with the same level of intensity on defense or on the defensive end of the ice as that you did in Mankato. And that becomes a very manageable series. It doesn't mean you're going to win. It doesn't even mean you win one game. But if you're trying to map out like matchup-wise how it plays out, I think that seems a little bit more advantageous for Bemidji State. Second, I'd probably go Mankato, as weird as that is to say. But they just don't have the guns offensively to, it's a really manageable game on the defensive side of it for Bemidji State when, Rhett Pitlick isn't coming through that door, and neither is Adam Isley or Josh Grohl, right? Like, they just don't have the firepower they did last year. They're better defensively than they were last year, which I didn't think was possible. Now, but they also lost Liam Hupka for their, how long? I don't know. Maybe he'll be back to the playoffs, but it's a group that just won in that building. I think that matters. It's a group that had their season end in that building last year. Maybe there's a little bit of juice that comes from that, but I just think matchup wise, you're basically saying you got to beat Tracy 6 times, 3 times in a night if you want to do the race to 3 thing, which is really, really tough, but it's just, it's no tougher than it is against Josh Kotai right now either. Yep. So I'd probably say Mankato and Augustana, however you want to order them, feel like 1 and 2. Michigan Tech feels like a comfortable 3 to me. Now, Michigan Tech does feel like the best team in the league to me right now. However, a little bit of that inexperience, especially defensively for Michigan Tech, and also the games are just wide open when they play Bemidji State. Like, it's physical, and there's a lot of playing through guys in those series, but at the same time, like, it feels like every game between Tech and Bemidji, even the ones this year that were part of that losing streak, felt like coin flips. And I just wonder if there's like a little bit of juju for the Beavs going into Houghton. It's a building they've won in before quite a bit, and a chance to get a little bit of retribution for the Mason Cup 2 years ago for seniors like Kirkland Irie, Mitch Wolf, those guys, right? And then St. Thomas is 4. St. Thomas is not a very good matchup for Bemidji State because while they haven't shown it yet this year, like consistently, they do have good goaltending. And I think when you have options between Musser and Trotter, like they're going to find the right option. This is essentially like kind of a tryout this weekend to me of like which goalie's going to take the net before, the Mason Cup begins. But I'd be terrified of Lucas Wallen and Nathan Pilling and Lucas Van Vliet. Like, those are 3 absolute stud forwards. Their defensemen get better every game. And that's with like Chase Cheslock still not having a goal this year. St. Thomas is a lot to handle. I think they play a similar game to Bemidji State where it's a lot of dump and chase and a very structured hockey. And if it's 2 structured games against it and it just comes down to like essentially a talent and a bounce issue, that doesn't really bode well for Bemidji State. But on the flip side of that too, if you can figure out how to beat them this weekend, and you just have to apply the same things next weekend, like maybe there's an advantage that comes with that and playing 4 straight games against the same team and 6 games against a team in a matter of 2 months. Like, that's, I don't know, maybe there's something there. I'd have to kind of just see what the vibe is around the room with that. But yeah, I'd say Augustana and Augustana and Minnesota State really feel like if you're looking for the advantageous route. But again, like, I'll go back to my previous point. Each team is good. Each team still has their flaws, and none of them are unbeatable. And nobody should want to play Bowling Green right now. It's just a heavy team, and if they get some momentum going, it's just a tough place to try and win games too.
Would there be a benefit to playing Bowling Green that you could potentially go on a 5-minute major just at any given moment? Not that the Beavers have been lights out on the special teams this year, but I don't know. That was I didn't really pay attention too much to that series. I can't lie this weekend, but it seemed like a lot of extracurriculars in that Bowling Green Minnesota State series.
I mean, it's crazy. Like the Gustav Sternberg stuff this year. Like, now I don't believe CHN properly has his penalty minutes listed. You're teed me up for this. I've been on the Gustav Sternberg beat for like a month now.
Oh yeah.
Ever since he threw Max Domestikov head first into the boards. So these, I don't think this number is right because he did have one of his 4 game misconducts successfully appealed. But he did take 4 of them in 6 games, and he was ejected in 4 out of 6 games for these, and then served a automatic 1-game suspension from the CCHA, and then got a second 1-game suspension from the CCHA. His automatic 1-game suspension was through the NCAA. The second was from the CCHA. But according to CHN's penalty minute stats, he has 94 penalty minutes in 21 games. The next highest penalized player is Ben Duran with 38 penalty minutes in 32 games. Like, this is one of the more shocking stats in all of college hockey this year, because then when we go to the nationwide penalty minutes counting stats, I guess, Gustav Sturberg leads the entire country with 94 in 21 games. The next lowest is Caden Lindstrom at Michigan State with 90 penalty minutes in 4 more games played. 4 fewer penalty minutes with 4 more games played. And then if we go down to the next highest player in the CCHA, Gustav Sternberg has taken 34 more penalty minutes in 11 fewer games than Trevor Talion at Ferris State. Well, again, he has his own penalty issues in a lot of ways. I think the thing is, like, with Bowling Green, though, like the penalties don't really seem to hurt him as much as you'd think they would. Like, it's pretty shocking to me that Bowling Green has, like, their PK percentage is 82%, and that's a team on the PK a lot of time on that PK. Their power play is sitting at 21.4%. Like, to me, it seems like Bowling Green is just a team where it's like, yeah, they're going to go in there and try and punch you in the mouth a lot, and they're going to cross the line a couple of times a game, and they're going to serve 2 or 3 more penalties, or, like you said, a 5-minute major that they otherwise wouldn't have to serve. But it also doesn't really seem like they care too much because their penalty kill is really good. Like, they have they're tied for the 20th best penalty kill in the entire country. They're 0.2 behind Michigan Tech. They're 1.5% behind Minnesota State. And I believe those are the top 3. Oh, Augustana is at 88.5%, which that's insane. Like, an 88% penalty kill. But the CCHA is a good, like, a lot of those teams at the top are really good at special teams, and I just don't think Bowling Green cares that much. And so, especially if you could, use it as like Braden Crampton took a penalty for, taking a guy's chin off, but screw it, we're going to kill it anyway, and now we're fired up to get him back on the ice. Like, I don't know. It's just it's really bizarre watching Bowling Green this year for a lot of reasons. And another conversation I'd like to be a fly on the wall in for is, like, Marco Hunt and Don Lucia, when they're, like, watching Bowling Green do this, is like, there has to be, like, a breaking point, right? Like, there has to be, but maybe the playoffs start and they're like, we can't afford to have this player sit for a game or in the box or whatever. And I don't know.
CJ, anything here?
No, I mean, I think we're pretty much hammering home the stuff. I think we've pretty much set the table for the tournament. I guess just kind of taking that 30,000-foot view of the season, Jared, I know that you did a good job earlier kind of explaining everything for the Beavers, but just kind of for the league as a whole, and you can include Bemidji State in any of these points as well. What has really stood out to you throughout the regular season, just in terms of the storylines throughout the conference?
I mean, to me, it's like I knew the league was going to be tight. The league was always going to be rather unpredictable this year, just with the CHL kids and 3 teams in the CHL just going head first, or 3 teams in the CCHA going head first into the CHL pool. And in that respect, I think what's been really, it's like simultaneously surprising and like expected is like some kids that have come from a CHL background have just been absolute studs, right? Like Bemidji State has a couple with Oliver Peer and Max Hildebrand as of late too. Like, he's really come on. Connor McLennan's had a really good second half, right? Like, these are kids with CHL backgrounds. I think Hudson Thornton had a really good start. I'd like to see a little bit more offensive production 5-on-5 from him, but talk about just a guy that's, like, the Bemidji State power plays had its issues this year, and I don't think Hudson Thornton's the reason for that. Like, he's been – I think it might be even worse without him. because he is really dynamic. And sure, he's prone to the big turnover, but but then you kind of look around at some of the other CHL players and it just hasn't clicked for them yet, whether they're a freshman or a U Sports transfer. And, I think that's where it's pretty expected for me, honestly. Like, I didn't expect Oliver Peer to have 18 goals and 13 assists. Like, that's crazy to think that he's going to be like a top 10 single season scorer in the history of Bemidji State D1 hockey. But for the kids that maybe haven't quite broken through into like a top 6 or a top 9 role or a top 4 pairing role, like that is more expected to me, just because that's the path for that freshmen traditionally take. It's, you have to kind of, first of all, earn your spot in the lineup, and then you have to adjust to the game. And like, I talked to Max and Veg about this a ton, where he's like, when you first start playing college hockey, like, you have to learn how fast you have to think. And it's like, you take a kid like Vig, who was one of the best players in the state when he was playing for Bismarck Century in high school. And then he, becomes just another guy, but then he ends up becoming one of the best guys in the Null his last year, at least on his own team, has a really good year in the USHL. Like, for basically his last like 5 years of playing hockey, he has been one of the upper echelon guys on his team. And he's played with the confidence of being one of those guys. And then you get to Bemidji State and you're sitting on the third D pair, the second D pair, and you're staring down the face of Max Plant, Zam Plant, and Jason Shagaby on your second weekend in college hockey. That's a level of speed, like a speed adjustment that I don't know. I'd love to talk to him about it now that like Max in Vegas, like, I think probably Bemidji State's best defender, and it took him a little bit to get here, but like, it's that weekend, like that was his worst game, was in Duluth. And I think he's told me that. And I think like that's like a pretty normal, trajectory for a CHL kid. Like Connor McLennan, sure, he's had a really good second half, but that's like a pretty normal trajectory for, a new kid coming into college hockey. It was a little bit slow for him at the start. Vincent LaBelle, like he kind of played himself out of the lineup in a lot of ways from the first half, but injuries happen. He finds himself in the lineup more. Now he's clicking a little bit, right? Like, took him a little bit to get going. So that was what was really expected. Was I thought more kids would have to go through that adjustment process. I didn't think like Oliver Peer would step into college hockey and be one of the best scorers in the country right away. Like, it's the same for like a Taden Trembecki for Michigan Tech. Like, the point totals he has are, ridiculous, right? Like Jack Anderson, like another one, like a Lindenwood transfer who couldn't scrape together 2 points together in the first half of the season. And now he's played himself like, I don't know. He just scores every game. He just can't stop scoring. And he's 6'6", 230 pounds, and he skates like he's 5'10". Like, that's crazy. I didn't think Owen Bartoskevich, right? So you can go up and down the list. It's like, that's where the big differentiator between like my expectations and where they ended up being. And then like, I think that all plays into like how tight it is here at the end with, again, 5 teams separated by 6 points, and all of them have a shot to win the league going into the last weekend. Like, that is insane. That is absolutely insane. I thought it was very, like, before the season, people, when we were doing like our Reporters Corner preview episodes, like we asked every single person we brought on, like, do you think the CCHA, like, how many teams from the CCHA get in the NCAA tournament? I think every single person except for one said 2, and the other person said 3. I've been on the train that they were getting 1 all year, and for a long time I thought it was wrong. Like, up until last weekend, I really thought I was wrong that they were only going to get 1. But where ultimately, like, the CCHA just kind of stayed on the status quo, is it just cannibalized itself again. Mm-hmm. Like, St. Thomas, if you want to find like the true turning point in the CCHA, I really do think it happened with 5 minutes left against Augustana at Leah Penny last weekend. Because St. Thomas is about to win that game in regulation and be in the absolute driver's seat to win the McNaughton Cup. And not only that, but like maybe win the McNaughton Cup on Friday night and rest your guys on Saturday going into playoffs. Like, and instead they end up in third place or in a tie for second place after that weekend. And I don't think St. Thomas is the favorite to win the CCHA anymore. Like, call me crazy, but I think it's right to expect that St. Thomas splits with Bemidji at worst It's a building they never won in before. They're not playing the January 16th and January 17th Bemidji State team anymore. I think we're going to see a much more rejuvenated and a much more re-energized Bemidji State team this weekend. And I think 3 points is absolutely fair to expect that out of Bemidji State. So if that happens, and if Minnesota State sweeps Northern Michigan and Michigan Tech and Bowling Green split, like a lot of people think they will, Minnesota State wins the league. And that's where I'm absolutely dumbfounded, is because they were left dead to rights in January. I mean, absolutely dead to rights. And even after being shut out at home against Bemidji State, they, with 4 games left, they found a way to pull back into it. And, you know, it took a 5-point sweep on the road against BG, but man, that's a gutsy win for Minnesota State. I got a question for each of you guys too, because I went on Tech Hockey Guy last night and I got laughed off the show in a lot of respects for saying this, but what would you think of St. Thomas leaving the CCHA with absolutely nothing to show for it? Do you think that's good for the CCHA or bad for the CCHA if you had to pick one?
For the conference is a different answer.
The fan part of it is,
I don't want them. I've
Right.
said this since the second it was official that they're leaving. I don't want them to leave with anything to their name. I do not care about them.
right.
I want to sweep them. I'd rather have Minnesota State. I don't think I'm allowed to say that I want Minnesota State to win the league. Or
You have to
Michigan
do
Tech.
like an explicit tag on this episode.
Exactly. But like I personally have been like so annoyed that they're just using our league as a stepping stone to get to quote unquote better things. For the league's perspective, I don't know.
It's win-lose regardless for the league's perspective.
Because like look what our team did. You know, what does the CCHA look like if St. Thomas wins the regular season, wins the Mason Cup, goes to the Frozen Four this year somehow, and then leaves immediately for the NCHC? Like it's good for the league because your brand recognition is out there, but then everybody knows that deep down, like St. Thomas has always been, and the recruits have known for 2 or 3 years now that they're going to the NCHC. So it's not like they've been eager to come play in the CCHA or something. So that's a really difficult question to answer.
Because the part that they laughed me off the show for was, and I say that in jest because I kind of walked it back like about 10 minutes after, but is it not like a sour taste in the mouth of the CCHA and the fans or whatever, of like, you know, let's say St. Thomas loses out on McNaughton, they don't win the Mason Cup, they miss the tournament, and they leave the CCHA with nothing, and they go to the NCHC, they move into like a more of a nationally branded conference, and for I guess the next 12 months or maybe even longer, it's you couldn't win anything in the CCHA and now you expect to win it in the NCHC. Like that comment right there is going to get said 100 times. And that in and of itself is like demeaning to the CCHA because it already is putting the CCHA on like, you know, the bottom rung of the ladder, which it has no business being on this year at all. Like, I think there's something I like, part of me says it's like somewhat validating for St. Thomas to win the CCHA. Like they earn their way out in a lot of ways. Like, you know, because it's like, sure, you have 5 years in the CCHA, but not all those years were created equal. Like the first year up from D3, right? Those teams were horrible, right? But the past 3 years is like kind of their window, their quote unquote window. And to come out of it with nothing, just it feels like it's further burying the CCHA in a lot of like unintended ways that I think from like a conference branding perspective is going to be like a little bit of an uphill battle to overcome. But then at the, you know, on the flip side of that, you know, there's 2 points where it's like, first, like, so let's say St. Thomas wins McNaughton, maybe not even Mason, but just one of them, and they finish 6th place in the NCHC next year, and that's your champion of the CCHA, finishing 6th place in the NCHC. Like that also is kind of hurts the league a little bit. And when I say hurts the league, I'm talking only from like the discourse perspective of
National
college
discourse
hockey.
of
Right.
Yeah.
The other aspect of this too is that if Minnesota State wins the league and is the only bid into the NCAA tournament in their down year, I think that is disingenuous to the CCHA as well, because it doesn't accurately assess how good Augustana, St. Thomas, and Bowling Green were as well this year. So it's a fascinating conversation. I think if let's say, okay, I'll ask this one because you guys are the Bemidji State fans. Like, from my perspective, outside of like, I guess I'd prefer Bemidji State win so the page views are better for the Pioneer. Like, like that's it. But like, truly, like I really don't have a dog in the fight of who wins the Mason Cup and the McNaught Cup.
It's one of the most frustrating things about listening to you on the CCHA show is that I know that you're like way more nonpartisan than we are, and it's like, from your perspective, I totally understand that rooting for other teams in the conference to succeed is good for the conference. From my personal, it's like, I don't care if Minnesota State never wins a hockey game again.
Right.
And it's so hard, especially in college hockey. Like
my ideal
out of conference. I need
ideal
Minnesota State to win games.
My ideal finish to the CCHA is a 4-way tie at the top, just because I think that'd be so funny to have to bring the cup to 4 different places for like, okay, you get it for 3 months, then you get it. And I think I would petition to the CCHA that the team should have to hang 4-way banners in their rafters for winning that McNaught Cup too.
Yes.
So like they should have all 4 logos on it, and they're all 4 different, like each of you guys get a quadrant. And like,
yes,
I don't know, that they would never go for it. But let me ask you this. Like, let's say Bemidji State finishes 7th. They lose a hard-fought game to whoever. It does not matter who the opponent is in the first round. If you're trying to find like the path of least resistance as a fan for who wins the Mason Cup, which is probably going to be the only bid into the NCAA tournament, which team, because it's not going to be St. Thomas or Minnesota State. Like, you guys don't want those teams to win. That makes total sense. It's your biggest rival, and it's a team leaving the league. So between Tech, Augustana, and Bowling Green, who do you want to win the CCHA?
I would put Tech solidly. Honestly, I'd put them below Minnesota State.
Really?
I do not like Michigan Tech at all.
They're
I've been
right
very
up there.
vocal about this since 2016, since they won, Bemidji State and then we're kind of at the top 2 in the WCHA. Tech, whether they're 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. I don't want them. I would say Augustana is probably my
St.
top
Thomas
pick.
5?
St. Thomas is 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Minnesota State is 3. I never would have guessed that.
And it's picking.
You feel gross saying it, don't you?
Yes, exactly. It's like, I mean, Augustana I think is pretty comfortable. Like, I'll be on their train if Bemidji State loses in the first round of the, CCHA playoffs, and then Bowling Green. I think there's a lot of things about Bowling Green that are not really that easy to cheer for with how they play and all that. But at the end of the day, they're not any of those other 3 teams, and I would easily put them.
They're like the least offensive in terms of regional rivalries.
So, Augustana pretty easily, I think, for me.
I think everybody in the CCHA just kind of starts rooting for Augustana if they make the tournament too. Of like, how can you hate Augustana? Like, they haven't done anything hateable to anybody. Like, their one playoff appearance, they lost at home and blew a 1-0 lead in the series. Yeah. And like, they're just a small little D2. I'm obviously a little biased there. I got the degree hanging.
Now we finally got the bias to show.
Yeah, but I also think that like Augustana making the tournament is like the best case scenario from the season. And this is just my opinion. Like, I have not heard anything from the CCHA about this, but like that the fact that a new college hockey team that was started 3 years ago is making the NCAA tournament, that's not just good for the CCHA. That's really good for college hockey. And it's like, it shows that it's like viable to do teams, and then the sport gets bigger, so on and so forth, right? But I don't know. Augustana is the curious one. I'll throw this out there too, because I've said too many nice things about the teams at the top that none of the Bees fans like. If I'm Minnesota State and I somehow end up in first place after this weekend, I am terrified of Ferris. I'm legitimately terrified of playing Ferris State, and I'm not like I feel like I'm the we recorded the CCHA show last week, and I said like part of me believes that Ferris State, it just took Ferris State a little bit longer, and then somebody reach out to me and say, you don't actually believe that? It's like, no, I actually do, because it's not just the fact that Ferris State's winning games. It's look at how they're winning them. They're getting good goaltending, and it's their top end transfers that were supposed to get this team out of the basement of the WC or the CCHA are the ones doing it. Josh Derry has the second most goals of active skaters in all of college hockey. Carter Applejay was their best transfer on paper, and he scored. I think he's a 3 or 4 game goal streak now. Because the Ferris State was on a bye last weekend too. So, like, sure, Ferris State has a lot of problems. They're one of the slowest teams I think I've seen in the CCHA this year. Yeah. I think betting on Martin Lundberg to play back to back and maybe even to back, really, really good games on the road like that, like keep your team in the game on the road, feels a little far-fetched to ask out of a kid like Martin Lundberg. However, when you look at what Minnesota State is bad at, it is generating offensive chances. And Ferris State has played much better defensively down the stretch. Much better. I know they gave up 4 to Northern. They gave 4 to Bemidji State at home, but or on the road. But it's a capable group of defensemen, and I think they're very opportunistic. And the guys that they need to lean on to play big games are playing big games right now. When we look at just how those two teams match up on paper, like it's the same reason if like I'm Michigan Tech, I want any team but Lake State, because Lake State plays this open, fast, back and forth style of hockey. Like they want to run up and down the ice with you. They're gonna say we have Rourke Appleby and he's gonna make more big saves than your guy, and it might not work, and it probably won't work, but it's at least like your best shot on paper to do it. At least from my perspective, like I'm a little scared if I'm Mankato welcoming Ferris into my building, because they should have lost that Saturday game against Ferris big time. Like that game, they were dead in that game. And Alex Tracy made a huge save in the third period to basically save that game for him. And so, yeah, okay. I'll end with one more question, because I know we're running up on the timer here.
And then I got one more thing to ask you too. So
sure. Take out Bemidji State. Like you don't have to say there's a winner or a loser, but does any of the bottom 4 seeds get out of the first round in a best of 3 series? If it's not Bemidji State, or it's Lake State and Ferris for sure, and it's most likely Bowling Green.
I think
because it's happened the past 2 years.
Yeah, I think, like you said, given the matchup, Lake State, they've been surprising me lately, where I kind of thought they were not nearly as good as Bemidji, where like, and now it's like, well, is Bemidji as good as Lake State is?
Yeah, we're going to find a lot about Lake State and Ferris this weekend when they play, because of why their team sweeps. Like, whatever I just said about Ferris State, if they get swept by Lake State, like, throw it out the window. Like, that's no longer relevant. But
I think
it's the same for Lake State.
It's probably more likely to be like Bowling Green if they draw, Michigan Tech. Well, it wouldn't be Tech.
Right.
It would be most likely like Augustana maybe in that situation. Then I would say probably Bowling Green.
It could be Tech too if Bowling Green gets swept by Tech and they play again in Slater.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking Tech to win that series. So
yeah. So
it's
probably one of them, but I would say Lake State maybe.
I'm on the Lake State
matchup.
Yeah. So okay, quickly. Jared, just very quick, I'm just gonna lightning round you here.
Sure.
First of all, talking state hockey, Detroit Lakes, a team that you're pretty familiar with, is knocking on the door of a section title. How are we feeling about that?
I'm so I was beaming on Saturday when they played that game. I texted the coach. I was like, hey, today's the day to take the next step. And Ben Noah texted me back after the game. He said, we took the next step. And for them to go out and get outshot by EGF and win that game in Thief, that's been their biggest hurdle. They just haven't been able to get back to the game. So first time in 25 years, good on DL. Fingers crossed they can beat Warroad, but
they only got to go through Warroad, So, that only.
But they have the goalie, and they might have the best player on the ice in that game in Easton Kennedy. So it's for the taking.
It's in play. And all right, one last thing, because we got to talk about it. What about that gold medal game, man? That was insane.
Which one? I mean, they were both fantastic.
They were both great.
Oh God, it was so good. The women's one, credit to Canada for getting off the mat. Marie-Philippe Pouyen, I hope she's done. I'm so tired of watching her may be the biggest difference in every US-Canada game. And then, obviously the men's game, it felt like I was doing the Spangler Cup again, where I woke up at 5 a.m. to watch it in Davos time. There's my dog. So Yeah, no, incredible. It was incredible hockey. And I think those were two of legitimately the best hockey games I've ever seen in my life. And stop complaining about 3-on-3 overtime. Like, yeah, it sucks. Nobody likes it, but it's not going anywhere.
You don't get to complain about 3-on-3 overtime when you're putting Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and Cale Makar on the ice.
And they won a 3-on-3 overtime game to get here.
Get there, yeah.
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 So, anyway. It's just like American fans can stop complaining about it too. Like, you done with 3-on-3 overtime? Stop watching college hockey too, because I've seen enough of it this year. Like,
win the game in regulation, figure it out.
Right.
So all right, we got 30 seconds here, Jared. Where can people find all the great work you're doing over at the Pioneer and your other ventures?
Yeah, BemidjiPioneer.com, Jared Rubado BP on Twitter. I wrote a really cool Oliver Pierce story last week. It's one of my favorite ones that came out this year. I'm begging people to read it because he is a true one-of-one story behind him. Almost quit hockey, and now he's one of the best scorers in the country. So, yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I know we got like 12 seconds left, but it's good, and it's fun chatting with you guys each time.
Glad to have you on. Roll Beavs. Want to be a part of the team behind the teams at Bemidji State? Join hundreds of dedicated fans when you donate to Beaver Athletics to help the BSU Beavers pursue its next championship. Your gift can power your favorite program, establish a scholarship for a student athlete you get to meet, and so much more. Every dollar brings the Beavers closer to raising another trophy. You can add to the proud tradition of success at Bemidji State, so don't wait. Give today at bsualumni.org/Beavers. That's bsualumni.org/Beavers. The Beaver Banter podcast, proudly brought to you by the Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation.